44 years ago, a show about a Boston bar full of nobodies became the most watched program in America, and the people who made it happen carried stories behind the scenes that most fans never heard. Stories that make the show itself look almost ordinary by comparison. This is the Cheers cast, then and now. The real version. Not just what they look like today, but who they actually were, what they hid, and what happened to them after the cameras stopped. And I'll save the one that genuinely stopped me cold for the end, because once you hear it, you'll never watch the finale the same way again. Cheers aired on NBC from 1982 to 1993, and it helped launch the careers of several actors who stayed in the spotlight long after the series ended. But the part that doesn't get told enough is how strange and specific the road was to get there in the first place. Because almost none of these people were supposed to be in this show. Let's start with Norm. Or more accurately, let's start with the guy who almost wasn't Norm. George Wendt's entire audition for the show was one word. The producers asked him to walk onto the bar set and say beer to Shelley Long's character. That was it. One word, and they knew. What's wild is that he'd actually read for the same not-yet-named regular character that John Ratzenberger had also auditioned for, a guy the script was still calling George as a placeholder. 2 future cast members tried out for a character that wasn't even named yet. Wendt became beloved enough for his performance that he eventually got his own short-lived sitcom, The George Wendt Show. But what almost nobody brings up in the standard retrospectives is that from 1978 until his death, he was married to actress Bernadette Burkett, and his nephew is actor Jason Sudeikis. Sudeikis, the Ted Lasso guy. Wendt's sister's son. A connection that almost never comes up. And then there's the part Wendt told David Letterman himself in 1990, laughing about how proud he was of the number. He was expelled from Notre Dame with a literal 0.00 GPA. 0. Not a low GPA. 0. And somehow that guy ended up playing one of the most lovable characters in the history of American television for 11 years. Wendt died in May 2025 in his sleep at his Los Angeles home. He was 76. He died on the 32nd anniversary of the series finale. Even the timing of it felt like something the writers would have come up with. Now, Ratzenberger. Because the Cliff Clavin story is genuinely one of the best audition stories in Hollywood history, and most people only know half of it. He went in to read for that same Norm role, still called George in the script at that point, and by his own account, he bombed it. He knew it while it was happening. So as he was literally walking out the door, he turned around and asked the producers if they'd considered having a bar know-it-all character. They hadn't. He then improvised one on the spot, right there in the audition room, including a bit about why Bic pens used to be spelled Bish. They called him back days later to try the character out for a few episodes. Cliff Clavin wasn't in the original script. He didn't exist until Ratzenberger invented him while leaving a failed audition. The white socks Cliff always wore? That was Ratzenberger's own idea, a personal tribute to French comedian Jacques Tati, whose physical comedy he admired. After Cheers, Ratzenberger has voiced a character in every Pixar film from Toy Story onward, including Ham in Toy Story and the abominable snowman in Monsters, Inc. That unbroken streak spans nearly 30 years of Pixar production. More recently, he voiced the character of Fritz in Inside Out 2. The bar know-it-all became Pixar's secret good luck charm. Now here's where things get heavier, and I want you to stay with me through this next part, because it connects to something I'm saving for the very end. Woody Harrelson joined the show in 1985 as a 21-year-old kid from a small town in Texas, playing a bartender from a small town in Indiana. He played Woody Boyd, the dim but likable bartender, and went on to star in 200 episodes of the sitcom. The charm was effortless. The warmth was real, and almost nobody watching at the time knew what was happening in his personal life. His father, Charles Harrelson, was convicted in December 1982, the same year Cheers premiered, for assassinating a sitting federal judge for a $250,000 payoff. It was the first assassination of a federal judge in the 20th century. Woody was born on his father's exact birthday. He spent his entire Cheers run carrying that, playing the most cheerful character on television while his father sat in federal prison. While Harrelson is now a bona fide Hollywood star with a glittering career and a slew of awards to his name, it was Cheers that first put him on the map. And then there's Kelsey Grammer. Grammer starred in his own Cheers spin-off, Frasier, for 11 more seasons after Cheers ended, and recently reprised his role as the title character for a revival. Paramount Plus revived Frasier in 2023. The reboot ran 2 seasons and was canceled in January 2025, with Grammer slipping back in as if no time had passed. 4 Emmys total, one of the most decorated sitcom actors in history. What the awards don't capture is what he was carrying the whole time. His father was killed in a home invasion when Kelsey was 13. His younger sister was murdered a few years after that. 2 of his half-brothers died in a scuba diving accident. All of this before Frasier Crane ever made him a household name. He built one of the most comforting, reassuring characters in TV history, while privately absorbing a level of loss that most people couldn't survive. All right, if you're still here and this is landing for you, hit subscribe. Because we go this deep on every cast, every show. And drop a comment telling me which one of these you didn't know. I'm genuinely curious how many people knew the Ratzenberger story versus the Harrelson one. Now, the one I promised at the start. Nicholas Colasanto played Coach, the warm, slow, sweet bartender who was the emotional center of the early show. What most people don't know is that before Cheers, Colasanto had shifted his career into TV directing, with credits that spanned major network shows. He'd also played real mob boss Tommy Como in Scorsese's Raging Bull right before Cheers. And the role of Coach almost wasn't his at all. It was first offered to actor Robert Prosky, who turned it down. Prosky later came back to the show anyway, playing an unrelated character in the final season. Colasanto had been diagnosed with heart disease years before the show started. By season 3, he was visibly declining, losing weight, struggling to remember lines, but he kept the severity of it from most of the cast. He died in 1985 during production. He never saw the show become the phenomenon it became. After he passed, a photo of Geronimo that he'd kept in his dressing room as a good luck charm was hung on the bar's back wall as a quiet memorial. Crookedly. On purpose. It stayed there for 8 more years. And here's the part that I promised you at the beginning. In the final scene of the series finale, 8 years after Colasanto died, Ted Danson's Sam Malone walks through the bar alone, shuts off the lights, and before the screen cuts to black, he stops to straighten that photo. That's the last image of the show. Not a joke. Not a speech. Sam straightening a crooked picture of Geronimo on a wall in a tribute to a man who'd been gone for nearly a decade. The show that made America laugh every Thursday night for 11 years ended with a quiet act of remembrance for the guy who didn't make it to the end. Cheers starred Ted Danson, Kelsey Grammer, Shelley Long, Rhea Perlman, John Ratzenberger, and George Wendt. Some of them are still working. As of 2026, Ted Danson stars in A Man on the Inside on Netflix, renewed for a 2nd season. Rhea Perlman has appeared in the star-studded Barbie movie and landed roles in TV shows Poker Face and The Studio. Ratzenberger is still voicing Pixar characters. Grammer is still Grammer. Harrelson is one of the biggest movie stars alive. And George Wendt, who walked into an audition, said one word, and became Norm, after Cheers, toured with Ratzenberger in An Evening with Cliff and Norm, and spent the rest of his life being exactly who he was on screen. George was a doting family man, a well-loved friend and confidant to all of those lucky enough to have known him, his publicist said when he passed. That's the thing about this cast. The bar where everybody knew your name wasn't just a set. For 11 years, it was real enough that when it ended, the whole country felt it. And 44 years later, it still holds. If you want to go deeper on the shows that shaped this era, the one on the cast of Seinfeld is right there. A lot of the same energy, a completely different kind of strange.